In his hands he's got the whole wide world. In his hands he's got the whole world. In his hands he's got the whole wide world. In his hands he's got you and me, brother. In his hands he's got you and me, sister. In his hands he's got you and me, fellows. In his hands he's got the whole wide world. In his hands. How big is your God? I was thinking about that this morning. The very idea that most believers, their concept of God is only as big as their personal crises. That's right. I mean, they can't think beyond the little personal issue in reference to how big God is. But before I go on, I should probably read to you the Psalm. And today's Psalm is Psalm 8. O Lord, our God, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. From the lips of children and infants, you have ordained praise. Because of your enemies, you cause your enemies to be silent, the foes and the avenger. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you placed in their place, what is man that you are mindful of him, the Son of Man that you care for him? You made him a little lower than the heavenly beings and crowned him with glory and honor. You made him ruler over the works of your hands, and you put everything under his feet, all flocks and herds, and the beasts of the fields, and the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea, all that swims the path of the seas. O Lord, our God, how majestic is your name in all the earth. All the earth. And above heaven, I saw some pictures, back a while ago, of various galaxies. Galaxies. Not even our solar, not our planet, not our little star system, galaxies. And they were so marvelously created. There was one galaxy that's kind of two-way, this way, intersected with a second galaxy this way. How does that stay in order? God's hand, God's plan. And I've seen other miraculous things, from the Hubble telescope and others. That's just marvelous. It just causes your mind to go wiggy. And then I told you about my trip to Yellowstone. We pulled over one of the hills, and there's a Grand Tetons. And there's a reason they're called Grand, by the way. And they're marvelous. Just so much big. It just struck me how big God is. And even that was limited view. People look at the ocean and go, wow. Or the sun, the moon, the stars, wow. The mountains go, wow. God is bigger than me. And you. I know you're shocked. Because oftentimes God is limited in size to our little world and our little crises and our little things. God is concerned with all those. But realize he is huge. He is the creator of the universes, plural. He's the master of everything. Did you know that in John chapter 1, verse 1, it says, interesting enough, in the beginning was the Word, that's a capital W, makes it a noun. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God. By him all things were made that were made, both visible and invisible. The very God who made the galaxies made little tiny atoms. How amazing is that? And everything is based on the common atom, no matter where you go. They looked at meteorites, atoms, moon rocks, atoms, anything on Earth, atoms. Everything is based in atoms. God's primary building block. How cool is that? And he just arranges the atoms a little different. They become a different element. That's why we have a periodical chart to try to figure that stuff out. But how big is our God? Is he big enough to meet your needs? Of course he is. If you are big enough to let him go, if you're big enough to trust him, I'm going to tell you one of the things that just kind of bites me in the butt. Yeah, I said butt. I guess I'm not a very properly religious person. But people say, Rabbi, God has called me to this place. Really? And then 3 months later, so much for God's calling. It makes it hard to trust people sometimes. But nevertheless, God sees everything in advance. You know, I've had people say, well, if your God is so big, then why does he permit war? Why is he permitting like the war in Ukraine or the slaughtering of people? Not just Jews, but everybody. That's the unique thing about God. It's the subject of free will. Free will. And God put everything under our control. So oftentimes we need to ask, why do we permit it? Why are we permitting it? So if God said, okay, I'm going to stop the war in Ukraine, or I'm going to stop the rockets over Israel, or I'm going to do this or that, and he violates free will, he starts making exceptions. And every exception, in my knowledge, eventually begins to erode away at the foundation. Yes, it's wrong to kill, to murder. Yes, it's right to defend yourself and others. But let's go back to this free will business just for a moment. The God who is so awesome and could throw universes out into the expanse of space, so far that we can't even imagine, can't begin to calculate. There aren't enough zeros. The same God permits you to act with a free will. And yes, there are consequences. Those consequences are also tied up into the laws of the universe. That's true. The laws of thermonuclear dynamics, the law of gravity, everything has a positive and a negative side to it. Just like in the little bitty atoms, there's a positive point, a negative point, and a neutral point. So, where am I going with all this? I want you to understand that you got free will. And no matter how great and big God is, you've got free will. But that free will is going to bring about consequences. And they don't have to be negative consequences. The Bible says you reap what you sow. You do. Why does it have to be bad? Sow good stuff, reap good stuff. Good stuff out, good stuff in, vice versa. It's the rule of the universe. And though another person's free will can hinder and even destroy and take life, there's a consequence because everything about you is eternal. Do you ever think about that? I stood on a mountain in Estes Park a long time ago. And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And there was just so many awesome stars. And I was just, wow, almost to the point that you can't take it in. You can't, actually, you can't. And good thing we only have 2 eyes, or we'd just be drowned in information and data. But anyway, and look at those things, and it came to my heart when all those stars had burned out. When they're all burned out, you are still going to be here. Because of everything God made that we know and understand, only you are eternal. Good or bad, you are eternal stuff. I heard one guy, kind of a cool sort of dude, you know what I mean? Said, we're stardust, man. We're stardust. And inside of me is the breath of God. You know what? He was right. He was right. But what do I do with that breath of God? Do I do good? Do I do bad? So you start thinking to yourself, how big is God? He's bigger than your personal issue. Now, here's why people don't see his greatness. Because they can't get beyond their own nose. They can't see beyond themselves. You got to look at the much bigger world, bigger picture. And so what if I suffer a little bit? Nothing compared to my Messiah. So if I take a beating here, if I take a beating there, so what? God is bigger. His plan is bigger. His heart's bigger. His hand's stronger. No problem, Lord. Anything you want me to do, I'll do because of you, for you. Because of you, for you. If that means going through hardship, go through hardship. If that means enjoy the pleasures of the world for a season, I'll do that too, without complaining. So, speaking of pleasures, daily cookie time, sherry coffee. God does supply little pleasures in life. I don't know if I'm addicted, but every time I eat one of these cookies and drink that coffee, I realize how blessed I am, how much somebody actually cares to bring a little joy to the rabbi. It's one of those things that just have to accept. You know, a lot of people cannot accept God's good blessing. They feel guilty, unworthy. I got news for you. Nobody's worthy. I'm not worthy of daily cookies or sherry coffee. Yet, by his good grace, I've received them. Just like I received the life in my body, the ministry which I'm supposed to carry out. He is bigger than me, bigger than my world, bigger than my problems, bigger. And in Hebrew, gadol, hagadol, the great, the big, the mighty. What do you think of that? And I think every time I try to reach out and do something new for the Lord, he already saw it. He already planned it. He's already laid it out. My only job is to stay on his track. Not stay on track, but stay on his track. And in doing that, God's grace is ever so abundant. As a community here in southern Colorado, let me tell you, God's given us a heart to go beyond our four little walls, beyond our little town of Pueblo. We are going to reach southern Colorado, hook or crook. You know what? And we don't have much resources, we don't have much money. Okay, we only got a handful of people who can really do such a thing, but we're going to use them as God has planned. Not Rabbi has planned, as God has planned. Great things are now and ahead of us. Our new Rabbi Jimmy Rittenhouse, he'll do his first drash, his first teaching, not this Shabbat, but the following Shabbat. And we also have our rabbi's assistant, David, and our rabbi's assistant, Casey. And they too are going to be bearing a lot of the load. God has given us the right men. Now, we're still looking for worship leaders and more musicians, keyboard players, guitar players, and a couple of really good voices. As God will send them to us, we'll be adding them. I foresee good things ahead. Though the world grows in darkness, we're going to grow in light. That was always the plan. It never stopped. And in your world, though it seems to be dark, God will let you grow in light if you wish, if you want to be part of his plan. So that means surrendering some of yourself, some of your resources, a lot of your time, and the biggest thing is a lot of your heart must be given over. Oh, there goes my phone. The only reason I'm going to take it, so you don't have to listen to it. Hello?
Hello, is this Rabbi Michael?
Yes, it is.
This is Mark with Church Mutual Insurance calling.
Mark, can you call me back in 10 minutes? I'm in the middle of a video program, and you're on it now.
How exciting. I will call you at 10 or 15. I'll call you about 9:30.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Why did I take that phone call? Because it's all part of the plan. We're juggling things, getting them all in line, preparing for God's kingdom. Thus, it's important not to miss his phone call or the phone calls he wants you to have. So anyway, let me go ahead and bring this to conclusion. Today, I would like you to consider being one of our partners. Come alongside us. And though you might not even live in Pueblo, you can still be a partner to us. How? not just by hitting the share button, not just by hitting the like button, which, by the way, we need you to do. You can also help support the program. We want to reach further, and I'm actually looking for resources. That's why I'm asking you to partner with us, become part of our programming. God is good. There's a gift button, a donate button there on the screen. If you would, consider it. Now, let me move on to our program and bring it to a conclusion. Above everything else, support your church, your parish, your synagogue. That's where your tithe belongs. Anything outside of that is a gift. Also, come alongside and work with your pastor, work with your priest, work with a rabbi, and a little bit with us. Share the program with a lot of people and help us to reach. Come on, we need partners. As Jesus said, the harvest is white, but the workers are few. So by his good grace, we'll be back here tomorrow with another message. And by the way, this week on Wake Up, we're going to be talking to one of the police chaplains about ministry outside of his church, outside of our church. And so, with that said,